Okay, hey people, it's Marc with a workshop on some practical session basics. It's a quick heads up for you all. I was hoping I would get someone here today to watch me do this thing, but it doesn't matter. I can talk without having a conversation. I've been watching your pracs and have been noticing a couple of really good things, but I've also been noticing some elements that keep coming back that need some change. And I just want to make sure we get all those practicals out of the way, or practical basics out of the way, so each and every one of you knows what to do when it comes to practicals. So I'm just going to go through them real quick as fast as I can without losing clarity. So here we go. When you're looking at practicals, obviously there needs to be some structure in there in terms of a beginning bit, a middle bit, and an ending bit. When I became a Toastmasters member, I don't know if you know Toastmasters, it's a public speaking mob. They taught me this way of setting up speeches. First of all, you talk about what you're going to talk about, then you actually talk about it, and lastly, you talk about what you just talked about. And that's that whole beginning, middle bit, and an ending. And in counseling, it's the exact same way. There are pretty much three parts to a counseling session, and it's generally the introduction or the start, introduction, start, whatever. And then there's a middle bit in which you can discuss the juicy bits. And then there's the ending where you wrap up and perhaps set homework or say goodbye to the client. So as long as you can make sure you put those three bits into your practicals in 20 minutes, it should be doable. Half an hour, same thing. Couple of minutes intro, fair amount of middle stuff, and then a wrap up. Then you're doing all right. I've done a workshop earlier, and I think it's on my resources page, about how to end a session. Usually in an hour session, you would start the ending phase around 45 minutes into it, and make sure you wrap up what you discussed, and then discuss homework for the next session or whatever it is that you want to discuss, and then wrap it up, say good day or say goodbye. But we'll get to that when I get to the ending bit. So in the beginning, that's where we're going next. Now, what do you do in the beginning of a counseling session? Well, obviously, you welcome the client in and do some rapport building. Now, that's basic stuff. Just do some small chit chat. In practicals, it's fine, obviously, if you go along the lines of, did you get here okay? How's your day been? What's the weather like? Et cetera, et cetera. But make sure you do some rapport building. Some practicals, I see that happening too much. There's so much rapport building that it gets a bit boring. Others are more like a military exercise where people just jump in straight away, sit down, right, what brought you here? That's not the way to go either. Definitely introduce yourself, do some general chit chat, build some rapport, and then get ready for the session. That's all part of that beginning bit. Now, one thing that has to be covered, and I sometimes see it covered too much or too little, is housekeeping, confidentiality. I work it in straight off after I start. So my sessions would go along the following lines. I would definitely build rapport. Did you get here okay? How's your day been? Blah, blah, blah. And so, look, before we kick off and I ask you what brought you here, let me do a couple of bits of housekeeping. Explain a little bit about confidentiality. And here's my actual spiel. Whatever we discuss today stays between these four walls. That means it's all confidential. There's a couple of exceptions to this confidentiality that I have to mention by law. Risk of suicide, harm to self, harm to others, or any criminal activities. If I think any of those four are happening, or if I have a suspicion that any of those four could be happening, then I will have to break confidentiality and ring anyone I deem necessary to ring in order to maintain your safety, to make sure you stay safe or the community stays safe. Now, the same thing goes for record keeping. I will take notes. Those notes are confidential as well. And the only time I have to break confidentiality is if the courts actually subpoena my notes and I have to hand them over. And that's never happened in the 15 years that I've been in practice, but I still have to mention it. Is that all clear? The client would then say, yep, that's all good. Great. Then we got that out of the way. And then you don't have to ever mention it again, unless it obviously becomes an issue. So in second and subsequent sessions, I don't need you to repeat the confidentiality again. You've done it in the first one. Now, in my private practice, just to give you an example, I generally see people for about a half an hour, 45-minute introduction session that's free, no payment for that one. And afterwards, I will email them my code of conduct and also a draft contract or a first draft of it. That has pretty much all that sort of stuff in there. It has all the general stuff in there, what counseling therapies I use and how I work, etc., etc. Now, in your pracs, I know they ask you to put all that stuff in and tell about the history of counseling and what counseling modalities are there. Don't do that. Just skip it. As I said to so many, and I've probably said it on EVO counseling buddies as well, don't make your sessions much longer than about 20 to 30 minutes. Even if the criteria say 45 minutes, don't worry. 20 to 30 minutes is long enough for me to get an idea about if you're doing well. So in your intro, what I'd like to see covered is the rapport building bit, obviously the housekeeping, the confidentiality bit, and what I'd like you to discuss as well is any previous counseling experience. So ask the client just straight up. It's like, have you ever been to counseling before? If they say yes, then still keep asking, okay, what was it like for you? What do you understand about counseling? And because you'll find that some people have really twisted ideas about what counseling actually is, you might as well squelch that in the beginning rather than get confronted with someone who expects one thing. You are not being able to deliver upon that one because counseling is just different. So have you ever been to counseling before? No? Okay, cool. Let me explain briefly what it is and run that past the client, whatever it is that you think you're doing. If they say, yep, I have been to a counselor before, saying, great. What was it? Was the counselor, psychologist, psychotherapist? And what was your experience? What do you think counseling is? And if they have the correct idea in your eyes, say, cool, yep, that's exactly what I do. And if they have some sort of twisted idea, then you can explain what counseling is and set them straight. And that's really important. So you'll find that expectancy and hope is about 15% of therapeutic outcome already. So if a person has an expectancy of something and it doesn't turn out the way they expected, you lose 15% chance of actually good therapeutic outcome. And that's research-based. So make sure they have the right idea about what you do. And it's an important one. So to summarize, rapport building when a client comes in, welcome them in, give them a cup of coffee, glass of water, whatever. Discuss confidentiality and its limits, and ask them if they have previous counseling experience and whatever their hesitations are. Oh, I forgot that. Also, if they ask them if they have any hesitations against counseling. Is there anything you don't like about counseling? Is there anything you're afraid of? Is there anything, have you ever had a negative experience with counseling before? Please tell me, so we can set that straight too. If you got all that set and all that is in your practical, then you are absolutely sorted. So make sure you put all that in. Right, next slide. After we've done all that, you get to the middle bit. Now that's the juicy bits, obviously, and I'd like to get to those as quickly as possible. So I wrap up my confidentiality and rapport building, et cetera, up as soon as I can, because I like to get to know the client and know why they're with me. So that's the let's talk bit. The standard question I can get you to ask in the practical, which is just fine, is like, what brought you here today? How can I help you today? A more solution-focused therapy question would be, what would be a result that we can get in this session that would make this session really worthwhile for you today? Or if this was going to be a great session, what would we have discussed at the end? To give the client an idea, or let them ask whatever they think, or not let them answer whatever they think they want to get out of the session. And this is a good chance, the middle bit, to get out the problem. What's going on? Just do some chat about whatever brought them there and whatever the issue is. Flesh that out. I call that Sherlock Holmesing. Absolutely flesh it out. Make sure your client brings out the story. Go deep into that one. What happened then? What happened then? And how's that a problem? And how does it affect your life, et cetera, et cetera. Don't do just okay, what's the problem? Well, I'm depressed. Okay, right. What would you like to do about it? Nah, just get it out. There's sound evidence in research that letting a client talk about the problem means that they feel understood. They can get their story out. They feel heard. all the good stuff that you want to do with person-centered therapy. So let them talk a bit about it. Now, in a 20 to 30 minute session, you obviously can't do too much of that, but I definitely want to see some exploration of what brought the client in and how that problem is affecting them, how it is affecting their family, how it is affecting their work life, etc., etc. Then next thing I want to see you discuss, especially in a first session, is what would you like to be different? So that could be a good question. A good question along those lines could be, what would you like to change? Or maybe the miracle question out of solution focused, or what would you like to get out of counseling? What is your idea about counseling and what would you like to get out of it? Or if you and I are working together brilliantly, what would be the end result of us working together? And make that as specific as possible. You'll find many clients come up with something standard like, oh, I just want to be happy, or I don't want to be depressed anymore, or I want whatever it is, some sort of vague term. And that's okay initially, but you want to make it as specific as possible, obviously. So if a client tells you, look, I just want to be happy, well, what would happiness mean? How would happiness translate for them? What would they be doing if they were happier? How would their partners see them? How would their kids see them? What would they be doing differently with their kids in their work, etc.? So get as specific as possible. Talk that through. So get some change happening means, well, let's talk about what things can change for that client to start getting the idea that things are actually changing. Solution-focused therapy is awesome in doing that, but it's pretty much what it focuses on. If you do Carl Rogers more than Carl Rogers stuff, then obviously you'll do a little bit less of that one, because that's just what it is. It's more talking about it. But anyway, still get some change happening somewhere. So apply it. Especially in your 006, that's your counseling therapies unit. You must put some cognitive behavioral stuff in there. It's just one of the requirements. Now, I know that most of you try real hard on person-centered therapy, which is awesome. But I'd definitely like to see more techniques from the specific techniques that I mentioned there. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, put a thought record in, put an ABC model in, put a restructuring in, put a decatastrophizing in, whatever else there is. Put some, I don't know, journal keeping, diary keeping, experimenting, all these CBT skills that are really cool, work them in. From solution focused, you could think about putting in the miracle question, some exception questions, some previous solution questions, some experiments as well, some goal setting, some smart goal setting. All that sort of stuff comes out of good old solution focused. ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. You can do some cognitive diffusion. You can do a bit of mindfulness. You can do a breathing exercise, which is very mindful, obviously. You can do some values elicitation, so people can start working towards living their values a bit more. You can look at meaning and purpose a little bit more practically. So all those skills from ACT that come in, work them in. I need to see them. If I see you do practicals where one of those, or where you try and bring in one of those things, like solution focused, ACT or CBT, but I can't see the exact skill coming out, can't pass you on that one because it's a definite box to tick on my marking sheet. With person-centered therapy, as I've always said, that's the foundation of every counseling session. It needs to be in there. It's as important as a hammer is to a carpenter. You need to put PCT in there. And I know I keep hammering and harping on the micro skills. Absolutely, folks. Train them. I'm still learning them. I still have lots to learn in that field, but I'm getting better, and I want you to get better too. So paraphrases, let me see if I got this right. Or reflections of feeling, oh, that must have been awful. Or summaries, just at the end, bring all those things in. And I would highly suggest you watch the Gloria videos, with good old Carl Rogers, because he does it brilliantly. But even just jump on YouTube and type in paraphrase counseling or reflections of feeling counseling. Make sure you put those in there. If I don't see you ask too many let me put it this way. I want to see you ask open questions. Too many practicals, I can still see too many people put all these did use, have use, can use, could use, have use, should use, whatever, did use, all closed. It makes it really hard to run a proper session that way. Yep. So put the open question in. What, where, why, when, how. Not too many why questions, because why can be pretty confrontational. But lots of who did it, where did it happen, when did it happen, how did it happen, etc., etc. All open questions that can get the story out, and it can help you keep a session going for at least 20 minutes, because the more you ask, the more a client will be able to tell. So that's all the stuff that you can do in a middle session. And I think my most, how should I put it, the thing that I put most attention on, the most emphasis on in marking your practicals is not necessarily if you do it perfect, but if I can see you get better at it. I'm not perfect. I still make major mistakes, but so what? As long as we still learn and reflect on our mistakes and do it better next time, I'm fine. But if I can't see you do open questions, if I don't see you do any paraphrases, any reflections of feeling, any summaries at all, I will definitely mark you down on those, because it's your basic toolkit, and you need to put those in. And when it comes to, for instance, 006, that unit, you want to definitely put in some CBT skills, ACT skills, and solution focus skills, because they're your core skills that you have to bring out in order for that session to be okay. What else? Anything else in the middle session? No, I think that's about it. I think my major tip is make sure you stay on top of what I post in terms of resources. But the major tip is for yourself is jump on YouTube, jump on websites that have videos on there on person-centered sessions. Watch Carl Rogers do his Gloria session. Watch Fritz Perls do his Gloria session, and watch Albert Ellis do his Gloria sessions, and see the differences between PCT, Gestalt, and what was the other, Rational Emotive, I think, with Albert Ellis. So look at them and learn, and make a cheat sheet for yourself with open questions on there. So you keep asking open questions, and then make a cheat sheet or a prompter for yourself to put in a paraphrase or a reflection of feeling or whatever else. And keep reading your Ivy and Ivy, Geldart and Geldart books, and anything else you can get your hands on that deals with how to run a proper middle bit of a session. We're professional communicators, folks. This is our skill. We just have a chat with a person, but it's a very professional chat, and the professional chat comes with professional communication skills. You need to know them. Oh, and one I nearly forgot. 002. Bring in your specialist communication skills, like confrontations. On the one hand, you say this. On the other hand, you do that. Or focusing skills. Or let's focus on your work a bit more, or let's focus on the solution a bit more. Or your influencing skills. Is it okay with you if I give you some extra information on how this affects you, or blah-de-blah-de-blah. Specialist communication skills out of 002 are really good friends for you as well. Use them. They're part of your toolkit. Okay, enough blah blah on that one. Now towards the ending bit of a session. What do you do? Well, we're getting to the end of our session. Say it. Just say it. We're getting close. Like, keeping an eye on time. I have to work towards slowly wrapping this session up. So summarize your session and the progress made. So summarize. That's ISE. The session and the progress made. Compliment the client on things that went well and the progress that you made. So from a sales point of view, it's really good to, as we are in sales, we constantly sell our next session, to summarize the progress that's been made. Like, look, and do it verbally. So look, dear client, I was really pleased with this session because I've seen and I've heard that we made this and this and this progress. This and this happened, that and that happened, blah, 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 blah. We're making really good headway. Still a long way to go, but I'm really pleased with what we've done so far. What do you think? And then put it back on the client. What do you think went well? What did you learn today? Open questions. Where did you have some insights that you didn't have before? Where do you think we can still make improvements, but you've learned a lot already? Yeah, let them bring out what went well. So that's the feedback bit. Now, practicals, it's fine to refer to your feedback sheet and say, look, can you please fill it out for me? But what I'd love to see is you actually doing this kind of verbal feedback, by you giving it and asking for it of your client. Make them do it. Obviously, you're going to also emphasize the steps to be taken between sessions. So that's homework. Person-centered is not that great on homework, doesn't do much. But as soon as you get into CBT or something else, definitely emphasize the homework bit and make sure the client does something in between. It's good, especially if you do solution-focused. There's always what they call a formula task first session or something, formula first session task. Always put something in that the client can do and practice with in between sessions, and then make a new appointment and close off. It's always a good thing to always say, look, when would you like to come in again? Don't make it a would you like to come in again, because that's a yes no one. Just make it a when would you like to come in next time, because that helps the client to sort of see that it's like, well, this is an ongoing thing. That's something I forgot to mention in the very beginning bit. When you structure, if you have a certain amount of sessions that you can do, mention session times as well. Today our session will go for about 45, 50 minutes or an hour, and we'll have a 6-session series or whatever you got. And if you don't have a series, you say, look, the program I run, and that's actually something I say to my clients. I have a 10-session format. Now, obviously, we don't have to do those 10 sessions, but it's a complete pack that runs from A to Z. You can choose to do all 10, or you can choose to do a couple out of those sessions, completely up to you. And then, making a new appointment is, well, when would you like to come in for your next session? It sort of presupposes that they will come in, which is good for business. If they say, oh, look, I'll just give it a miss for a while, I say, great, that's awesome. Then still give them some homework. And otherwise, it's 2 weeks or a week, whatever. Now, a couple of don'ts that I see a little bit too often in practicals that you guys do is too many closed questions. Please don't do that. Did use, have used, can use, should use, whatever, do use. Not too many of those, please. A lot of you also forget good old Carl Rogers, and I'll keep harping on it. He's the absolute foundation of every good counseling session. You want to use your person-centered skills. So read up on person-centered therapy, watch the guy in action. Even though I think Gloria videos are from the 1960s somewhere, they're still solid value. They're good. So look at that. Don't become a social worker. That's one of my other sort of little bugbears. I know everyone means well, and I do it too. We want to rescue clients. We want to save them. We want to help them. So we start to prompt solutions and give them things to do. Now, that's not counseling. It's great in social work because that's what social workers do. But really what we want to do here is draw client strengths and resources out of them rather than give it to them. So in a session, don't do things like, okay, here's a good resource and let me put you onto it, or why don't you do this, this, or this? That's not counseling. That's social working. It's okay to suggest something, but do it in a permission asking kind of way. So if you just from your experience or from your knowledge or whatever, or experience with previous clients know that something really works well and you definitely want to get it across, then ask for permission. So look, and prompt it that way. So from my work as a counselor, I have found that certain things work really well, or research shows that this and this works really well. Is it okay for me to share that with you? Would you be okay if I tell a little bit more about that? And if your client then says yes, then you're obviously free to go ahead. Same with psychoeducation. There's plenty of stuff that you can teach people, but don't just ram it down their throat because they won't like it. And sometimes they haven't asked for it and don't want to know it. So ask for permission. So look, especially for instance, if you work with drug and alcohol clients, if you start to lecture them on the negative side effects of using alcohol or drugs, well, they probably know that already. But if they don't start ramming it down their throat as being a good old parent. Say, is it okay with you if I share some of the things I know about the effects of alcohol and drugs on your body? And usually clients will go like, yeah, sure. And they say, great. And now you got permission. You can tell them. but don't just do it like that. What you'll find is if you give clients too many suggestions, or if you become a lecturer rather than a counselor, that you'll start to build up resistance in the client that destroys the therapeutic relationship quite quickly, which makes it really hard to then get things done. And it's the same with homework. If you give clients homework, then they might do the homework because you're such a good person and they would like to please you, but it's not a sort of a very empowering thing to do. Yeah. If you want to make sure the client does homework and make it part of their routine, they have to own that solution. So first of all, they have to come up with that solution, then have to own it as well. If you give it to them, they don't own it. It's just something you gave them. If they come up with the solution by you asking for it, and if they then commit to the solution by you asking for it, then there's a fair chance that they'll keep it up and make it part of their routine. And that's something you'll find in subsequent sessions. If you ask them whether they've done their homework, I can tell you from my experience, if I tell them to do something, fair chance that they haven't, or they've done it just to please me, or they haven't done it and now feel really guilty, which just add insult to injury. But if it's something they really want because they're motivated to change, then it'll work. And the last thing is in your practicals, don't forget your feedback. Hey, make sure you ask for feedback along the lines of what I just discussed. So tell them what went well, what you thought went well, ask them what they thought went well, discuss that, and then discuss next steps. Obviously, do get feedback from the client. That's what I just talked about. Confirm the next appointment. That's just good sales practice. We are definitely in sales, even though you think you're in mental health and in counselling, you're in sales. We're all in sales, especially if you're in private practice and you don't get any Medicare rebates, which most counsellors don't. It's good to try and ensure that your client comes back. So just presuppose they will. When would you like to book your next session? Make sure they keep coming back. So the more you can talk up your own work and talk up the client's progress and keep assuming that they'll come back for the next session, then they will, hopefully. But at least your chances increase. So make sure you confirm that one. Don't let them just walk off. Also give homework. It's very powerful to make people do things in between sessions because they keep busy with it. You can check up on it. And obviously, when you discuss it next time and there's progress made, it's something you can celebrate with your client. And that's always a good thing. It gives them a sense of progress. And again, 15% is hope and expectancy in the therapeutic outcome. 15%, 40% is therapeutic alliance. About 30% is extra, what they call extra therapeutic factors, so client factors, environment, etc. 15% is the technique you use, and 15% is hope and expectancy, the sort of placebo effect. Make use of that one. Always be hopeful for your client. And the last point is be respectful but very assertive in selling your services. We're in business, folks. You might as well realize that you're in business. So don't go to an extent of like, oh yeah, whenever the client wants to come back, that's fine. No, make them come back, man. You're in sales, so use it. Now, again, do that in your practice as well, and you should be fine. And I think just for a quick workshop, that's about it. It's just stuff that I've seen happen in practicals, go really right, but sometimes go really wrong. So maybe watch this one again. I know I'll go fast because I just try and cram as much in as I can in a short amount of time. But go over this, make a cheat sheet with things that I'd like to see in practicals. That I think are just practical basics. It's not that I want to see them. They're just part of a good counselling session. And then from that point forward, your practicals will absolutely start to rock and roll and be all marked off successful, I think. Any questions, you know where to find me. Text, email, Facebook, whatever. Call me. And yep, I'll do another workshop soon on another topic, probably around practicals if I come up with a good one. All right, that's it for now. I'll quit the recording and talk to you later.